I was about to marry the love of my life, Stephanie, when a nightmare from my past emerged. My future brother-in-law, Jake, who had tormented me throughout high school, was now demanding to be my groomsman. When I expressed my concerns, my fiancée and future in-laws dismissed them as just past teenage drama. I felt trapped between honoring my boundaries and pleasing my new family. The stress was bringing back memories I had spent years trying to forget. Let me know where you are watching from, and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up for yourself in difficult family situations. I am Monroe, 32 years old now, and living what most would consider a successful life. I work as a software engineer at a respected tech company in Seattle, have my own apartment downtown with a view of the Space Needle, and had finally found love after years of focusing on my career. I met Stephanie 3 years ago at a dinner party hosted by our mutual friend Thomas. She walked in wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, and I was immediately drawn to her confident laugh that somehow stood out above the dinner party chatter. We ended up talking in the kitchen for hours about everything from our shared love of hiking the Cascades to our mutual appreciation for classic Hitchcock films. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and made plans to watch Rear Window together that weekend. Our relationship bloomed quickly into something deep and meaningful. Stephanie worked as an environmental lawyer passionate about protecting the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest that we both loved exploring together. 6 months ago, I proposed during a sunrise hike to our favorite mountain lookout. I had carried the ring in my pocket, terrified of dropping it off the side of the mountain. When she said yes, the morning sun caught her tears, making them sparkle. It was the happiest moment of my life. Meeting her family had gone surprisingly well. Her mother, Amanda, was warm and enthusiastic, already talking about grandchildren during our first dinner together. Her father, Richard, was more reserved but clearly approved, especially after discovering we shared an interest in vintage cars. Her younger sister, Talia, still in college, immediately adopted me as another big brother, sending me memes and asking for tech advice. But there was one family member I had not yet met. Stephanie had mentioned her older brother, Jake, was always traveling for work as a sales executive for a pharmaceutical company. Each time there was a family gathering, he happened to be away on business. I never thought much about it until the day Stephanie casually mentioned that Jake would finally be at Sunday dinner and was excited to meet me. I will never forget the moment she showed me a recent family photo, and my blood ran cold. Jake Thompson, the name and face that had haunted my nightmares throughout my teenage years. Jake Thompson had been my personal tormentor throughout all 4 years of high school. As a freshman, I was scrawny and awkward, an easy target for Jake and his friends. They would shove me into lockers hard enough to leave bruises, knock books from my hands, and steal my assignments just before they were due. Teachers rarely caught them in the act, and when they did, Jake would charm his way out of serious consequences. Sophomore year was when the psychological torture escalated. Jake started spreading humiliating rumors about me. He created a cruel nickname based on an embarrassing incident in gym class that somehow stuck for years. Even teachers began using it, not realizing its origins. I started skipping classes, my grades dropped, and I lost what few friends I had. Junior year brought the sabotage of my science project the night before the state competition. I had worked for months on a complex computer program that analyzed weather patterns. It was my chance to impress college scouts and possibly earn a scholarship. The morning of the competition, I discovered someone had spilled soda all over my equipment, completely destroying both the hardware and my backup drives. Later, I overheard Jake laughing with his friends about how easy it had been to get into the science lab after hours. Senior year should have been better. Jake had graduated and moved on to college, but he returned for our prom dating a senior girl. That night, I had finally worked up the courage to ask Amy Garcia to dance. Just as we stepped onto the dance floor, I was drenched from above with a mixture of punch and what I later discovered was urine. Jake had orchestrated the entire thing with his younger friends, still at school. The laughter was deafening as I stood there humiliated and dripping. Amy had been kind enough to help me clean up, but the damage was done. I left early and spent the rest of the night alone. The bullying had profound effects on me. I developed severe social anxiety, struggled with trust issues, and spent years in therapy working through the trauma. I had managed to rebuild my life, focusing on my education and career. The thought of encountering Jake again had never even crossed my mind. And now he was about to become my brother-in-law. I had a panic attack right there, in Stephanie's living room. She was confused and concerned as I struggled to breathe, showing her the picture again and asking if that was really her brother. When I finally managed to explain our history, her response cut deep. She laughed. Not maliciously, but dismissively. She waved her hand and said, "That was just teenage boy stuff, Monroe. Jake was probably just going through his own issues. He is completely different now." I tried to explain that what he did went far beyond normal teenage conflict, but she kept minimizing it. "You two were just kids. Everyone does stupid things in high school. You are both adults now. You need to move past this." For the first time since meeting Stephanie, I felt a seed of doubt about our relationship. If she could dismiss something that had caused me years of pain in therapy, did she really understand me at all? The first family dinner with Jake present was excruciating. He pretended not to fully remember me at first, giving me a too firm handshake and saying, "Monroe, yeah, I think I remember you. You were the computer guy, right?" But the gleam in his eyes told me he remembered every cruel moment. Throughout dinner, he made subtle digs that only I would understand, casually mentioning science fairs and proms while watching my reaction, asking if I still have a sensitive stomach when Amanda served punch. Each comment was carefully crafted to seem innocent to everyone else while cutting me to the core. Stephanie must have sensed my tension because she squeezed my hand under the table, but she never spoke up or redirected the conversation. Each time Jake made one of his comments, her parents would laugh or engage, completely unaware of the subtext. As wedding planning began, Jake volunteered to help with everything. He insisted on joining venue tours, cake tastings, and even offered to plan my bachelor party. The thought made me physically ill. Each time I tried to create distance, Stephanie would tell me how sweet it was that her brother wanted to be involved, and how happy she was that we were getting along. The breaking point came during a family dinner to discuss wedding details. Jake stood up, glass raised, and announced, "As the brother of the bride, I am looking forward to standing beside Monroe as one of his groomsmen on the big day." Everyone clapped while I sat frozen. I had already chosen my groomsman. My best friend Luis would be my best man, along with my cousin David and two close friends from college. I had never once indicated to Jake that he would be included in the wedding party. Later that night, I had a private conversation with Stephanie in our car. I tried to explain calmly that I was not comfortable having Jake as a groomsman. I reminded her of our history and how his behavior was still manipulative and triggering for me. Her response was cold. "It is just one day, Monroe. He is my brother. You need to get over it for my sake. Having him stand on your side would mean so much to my family. Why do you want to create drama right before our wedding?" I felt like I was talking to a stranger. The empathetic woman I had fallen in love with seemed completely blind to my feelings. I called my best friend Luis that night and explained everything. Unlike Stephanie, he validated my feelings immediately. "That is messed up, man. You should not have to include your abuser in your wedding party. That is your boundary to set, no one else's." His support gave me strength, but it was short-lived. The next day, Amanda called me directly, her voice sugary but with an edge I had never heard before. "Monroe, sweetie, I think you need to be reasonable about this groomsman situation. Think of Stephanie's happiness. Family is so important on wedding days. You would not want to start your marriage by creating divisions, would you?" The day after that, Richard invited me to lunch, just the two of us. What I thought might be a chance for understanding turned into another ambush. He gave me a long speech about family loyalty and how water under the bridge should stay there. He talked about how becoming a man means letting go of childhood grudges. Each word felt like another weight being added to my shoulders. Jake's behavior only worsened as he sensed the family rallying behind him. He began making overt jokes about our high school days. "Remember when you used to help me with math, Monroe? Such a brain you always had." Of course, I had never helped him with math. He had copied my answers after threatening to beat me up behind the gym. Stephanie became increasingly frustrated with what she called my inability to move on. She would leave the room when I tried to discuss my feelings, or worse, would tell me I was being dramatic and making everything about me. The woman who once held me through nightmares now seemed annoyed when I mentioned my anxiety returning. Things reached a breaking point at another family dinner, where everyone ganged up on me to just let Jake be in the wedding. Talia, who had been my only ally, finally caved under family pressure and suggested I was making too big a deal of ancient history. I started having panic attacks again, sometimes waking in the middle of the night gasping for air. My therapist, who had not seen me in over a year, suggested I consider postponing the wedding until these issues could be resolved. The very thought broke my heart, but I was beginning to wonder if that was the only solution. The rift between Stephanie and me grew wider with each passing day. We communicated less, spent more time apart, and when we were together, tension filled the air between us. I could not imagine my life without Stephanie, but I also could not accept Jake's presence in one of the most important days of my life. I felt completely trapped, with no one in my corner except Luis, who lived across the country, and could only offer support through phone calls. After weeks of increasing isolation and anxiety, I made a decision that would unexpectedly change everything. One night, unable to sleep and feeling completely alone, I created an anonymous account on Reddit and wrote about my situation. I detailed the years of bullying, the physical and psychological torment Jake had put me through, and how he was now forcing his way into my wedding party with the full support of my fiancée and future in-laws. I described the science fair sabotage that cost me scholarship opportunities. I wrote about the prom incident in excruciating detail, still remembering the smell that clung to me as I drove home alone. I explained how these experiences had shaped years of my life, leading to therapy and a long journey toward healing that was now being undermined by the very people who should have been supporting me. I ended the post asking if I was overreacting by standing firm on not wanting my former bully as a groomsman, and whether postponing the wedding was the right choice if my fiancé could not respect this boundary. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, hundreds of comments appeared, nearly all validating my feelings and boundaries. People shared similar stories of family members dismissing past trauma. Mental health professionals weighed in about the importance of maintaining boundaries with former abusers. Many suggested that Stephanie's dismissal of my feelings was a serious red flag. The post quickly went viral, being shared across multiple platforms. People began creating videos discussing the situation on TikTok and YouTube. Comments poured in from around the world, all expressing outrage on my behalf. For the first time in months, I felt understood. Complete strangers were offering the validation and support that my own future family had denied me. It was both comforting and heartbreaking. Why could people who had never met me understand my pain while those who claimed to love me could not? A few days later, Stephanie texted asking me to come to her parents' house for dinner. I almost declined, emotionally exhausted from the constant battles, but something in her message seemed different. She mentioned that it was important and that she needed to see me. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense, but not in the way I had come to expect. Jake sat at the dining table, looking uncomfortable, while Stephanie, Amanda, and Richard stood together with serious expressions. Talia sat in the corner, scrolling through her phone with unusual intensity. "Is everything okay?" I asked, confused by the strange tableau before me. Stephanie stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "No, everything is not okay, but we are going to fix that tonight." What happened next was surreal. One by one, Stephanie, Amanda, and Richard began confronting Jake. They quoted specific incidents of bullying, using almost the exact words from my Reddit post. They described the locker shoving, the nickname, the science fair sabotage, and the prom incident in detail. Jake's face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally panic as they continued. "How do you know all this?" he demanded. Talia looked up from her phone then. Someone shared a Reddit post in my psychology class discussion group. I recognized the story immediately. She turned her phone around, showing the screen with my post displayed. "I sent it to everyone yesterday." My heart stopped. My anonymous confession had found its way back to the very people I had been writing about. Stephanie turned to me, her eyes red. "Monroe, I had no idea. I mean, I knew Jake was not nice to you, but I never knew the extent. You tried to tell me, and I did not listen. I am so sorry." Amanda was openly crying. "The things he did to you were criminal, Monroe. Bullying does not begin to cover it. That was abuse." Richard, always stoic, had a hardness in his eyes I had never seen before. "Jake, I'm ashamed of you. Ashamed that you were capable of such cruelty, and ashamed that I raised someone who has never shown proper remorse." Jake tried to defend himself, claiming I was exaggerating and playing victim, but his protests fell flat as they continued to quote specific details only I could have known. Then Richard delivered the blow that silenced Jake completely. "If you cannot genuinely apologize and make amends, you will not be welcome in this family. No more company position, no more family holidays, no financial support. Nothing." Jake's anger quickly turned to desperate pleading. "You cannot be serious. Over some stupid high school stuff." He tried appealing to each family member, finding no sympathy. Finally cornered and desperate, Jake broke down. "I was jealous." "Okay," he shouted. "Monroe was everything I was not. Smart, genuine people liked him for who he was. I was only popular because people were afraid of me. I knew it even then." The room fell silent at this confession. Jake continued, his voice quieter now. "I was miserable in high school. Dad was always pushing me to be tougher, to be a man. I took it out on guys like Monroe, who seemed to have it all figured out. It was not an apology, just an explanation, and not a particularly good one. But it was the first honest thing I had heard from Jake in all our years of knowing each other." Everyone looked at me, clearly expecting me to respond. In that moment, something shifted inside me. For years, Jake had held power over me through fear and traumatic memories. But looking at him now, desperately trying to save face, I finally saw him clearly. Not as the terrifying bully who had dominated my teenage years, but as a deeply insecure person who had never grown beyond his high school mentality. I stood up, feeling steadier than I had in months. "Jake, I do not need you to be my groomsman. I do not need to pretend we are friends. What I needed was for people to acknowledge what you did and stop dismissing my feelings about it." I turned to Stephanie and her parents. "Forgiveness does not mean I have to welcome my abuser into one of the most important moments of my life. It means I can move forward without letting that past define me. But moving forward also means respecting my own boundaries." The room was completely silent. Even Jake seemed stunned by my calm assertion. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly in control. In the days that followed, many things changed. Jake left the house that night in anger, peeling out of the driveway in his expensive car. Stephanie and I had a long, honest conversation about trust and support. We both agreed that the foundation of our relationship had been damaged and needed repair before we could move forward with the wedding. We made the difficult decision to postpone. Some deposits were lost, and we had to make numerous calls explaining the situation. But with each call, I felt more certain we were making the right choice. We began attending couples therapy, working through not only the Jake situation, but other patterns we had never addressed. Stephanie admitted she had a tendency to prioritize family harmony over individual needs stemming from years of playing peacekeeper between her parents during rough patches in their marriage. I shared my fear of confrontation and how it led me to swallow my feelings until they became overwhelming. During this time, I also reconnected with childhood friends I had lost touch with due to the anxiety and trust issues stemming from Jake's bullying. My world, which had narrowed to Stephanie and her family, began to expand again. I felt more balanced, less desperate to please at the cost of my own well-being. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received a letter from Jake. Unlike his previous attempts at minimizing and justifying, this one contained no excuses. He wrote about facing his own demons and beginning therapy to understand why he had been so cruel. He acknowledged specific incidents and took full responsibility for each one. He ended by saying he respected my decision not to have him as a groomsman and would keep his distance at family gatherings if I chose to continue my relationship with Stephanie. I did not respond immediately. I took the letter to my therapist, and we discussed it at length. She helped me see that I did not owe Jake forgiveness or friendship, but I could acknowledge his attempt at accountability. Eventually, I sent a brief email thanking him for the apology and expressing hope for his therapy journey. I made it clear that while I would not have him as a groomsman, I would not object to his presence at the wedding as Stephanie's brother. I also set firm boundaries about jokes or references to our past. 6 months later, Stephanie and I had a smaller, more intimate wedding with people who truly supported us. Jake attended, but kept a respectful distance. He offered a brief congratulations, but otherwise gave me the space I had requested. It was civil, which was all I had asked for. The experience changed me in profound ways. I learned that standing up for myself did not mean losing people I loved. In fact, it brought Stephanie and me closer once we worked through the initial conflict. I learned that forgiveness does not require friendship or pretending the past never happened. It just means not allowing that past to control your present. Most importantly, I learned that true family respects boundaries. Stephanie's parents, once they understood the full story, became my strongest advocates. They never pushed me to include Jake in anything and made sure family gatherings were comfortable for everyone. The journey was painful, but it freed me from years of lingering trauma. By facing my bully and setting clear boundaries, I reclaimed power I had surrendered long ago. And by standing firm in those boundaries, I showed myself that I was worthy of respect. So I ask you, when did you realize that standing up for yourself was more important than pleasing others? What boundaries have you set that improved your relationships rather than damaging them? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their boundaries matter too. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply say no to what hurts you.